Hi, I'm Ray McBary, pastor at Pinnacle Baptist Church in Griffin, Georgia. This is the third in a series of at least 5 videos that will be released, perhaps more. Haven't made that decision yet. But I want to go back to the beginning of what started this series of videos. For about 1.5 years, I had been friends with Lynn Wood, a former defamation attorney who has since been sued for defamation by several people. Himself, to the best of my knowledge, he's no longer a practicing attorney in Georgia. In fact, I think he's no longer even allowed to be a member of the bar, but I don't know all the ins and outs of that. I just know that he no longer practices and that he has been the subject of several defamation suits himself in recent years. Anyway, I had been friends with him for about 1.5 years and had done a number of things for him as a friend. I've checked on him a number of times. I went and spoke at his request as the keynote speaker at a big fundraiser that he had out in South Carolina about a year or so ago, and have just done whatever I can to be a friend. My Sunday school class that I teach at church, we've prayed for him by name many times before Sunday school starts, and many other things as well. Anyway, I had a phone call with him about a month ago. Everything went fine. Just called to check on him like I normally do if I haven't heard from him in a while. And then just out of the blue, a little over a week ago, he online accused me of being a Mason. Well, to the average person, they don't care whether somebody's a Mason or not a Mason. But to this Baptist preacher, it matters. First of all, I'm an independent Baptist preacher, and most independent Baptist churches don't allow Masons to be pastors or deacons or anything like that. Our church is like that. And on top of that, for the last 30 years, I have been speaking out on why Christians should not be Freemasons. In fact, I have put out several years ago, I think about 2 years ago, a 5-part video series that's available on YouTube, and I'll make sure someone puts a link to it in the description below this video so you can go and see it yourself if you haven't seen it already. It is probably the most in-depth study of what Freemasonry is and revealing the secrets of Freemasonry. And of course, anybody who knows anything about the rules of Freemasonry know that the number one rule you have is that you're not allowed to divulge any of the secrets of Freemasonry when you're talking to other people. And so the accusation of me being a Mason is silly on so many different levels, but there were, of course, several other proofs that Mr. Lynn tried to put out there to say that he was correct in his assumptions, intentionally by his implications and the overt things that he said, trying to make people believe that this pastor is a Mason or was a Mason. And so I had to deal with that. And I have dealt with it, and I'm going to continue to deal with it. I want to let you know a little bit about how it started and where we are now so that you won't be caught unaware with what's coming. First of all, I did nothing wrong to Mr. Lynn Wood. I've been nothing but a friend to him, been nothing but kind to him. Our church has been nothing but kind to him. I didn't charge him a speaker's fee like I normally would when he asked me to be the keynote speaker at his big fundraiser last year. I don't know what the numbers were of the amount of money he brought in from it, but I have been told by several people who worked the event that it was one of the biggest fundraisers they've ever had and one of the best attended that they've ever had. Well, when he attacked me, he did that for no reason. I'm not a Mason, never have been a Freemason, never intend to be a Freemason. And not only that, but I have never been a member of any secret society, including the Freemasons. So there was no reason for the attack. So I want to make this extremely clear to everyone who's watching, because there are some of the woodheads that watch this, and so I want to make this clear. There's only one person who is at fault in this entire issue, and that's the person who needlessly and without cause attacked a pastor and called him a Mason. That's the only person who's at fault in this issue. This pastor shares no responsibility for it. Our church shares no responsibility for it. And neither do any of the hundreds of people who have come to this pastor's defense share any responsibility in it. There's one person who was initially responsible for it, and that's Lynn Wood. And there have since been a small handful of other people, not a lot, but a small handful, who have come to his defense in saying that he was right in what he said, and they've been reposting and restating the accusation that I am or have been or must be a Freemason. Well, those people are now responsible also, so they're guilty also. But there's no one else in the entire incident who's responsible. It's not, I hope the two of you get things worked out. No, it's, I hope Lynn Wood gets his heart right, repents of what he's done, and asks for forgiveness. But unfortunately, I had to give him an ultimatum of when the deadline was to do that, because he's already made defamatory statements about me and about Pinnacle Baptist Church online in front of a very public venue. So I gave him a deadline. I told him exactly what he had to do. And he got my text message. I told him what he needed to do if he wanted to avert what was coming. And then within just minutes, I think it was about 2 minutes later, something like that, within just minutes, I got a phone call from him. And in that phone call, he began by saying he was sorry for the misunderstanding and wanted to get everything worked out. I said, well, Lynn, we can certainly do that. I'm glad that you called. I said, here's what you're going to need to do in order to make this right. I said, the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to admit that what you did was wrong, and then you're going to say you're sorry, and if you're sincere, I'm going to forgive you. Then, in a very public way, I'm going to give you the opportunity to say the same thing to the entire world. Something along those lines, not those exact words. Well, he immediately began backpedaling and trying to defend himself and saying, oh, I didn't call you a Mason. I didn't call you a Freemason. Well, yes, you did. And you intentionally tried to get other people to believe that I'm a Freemason. You've caused damage to myself. You've caused damage to Pinnacle Baptist Church. And as I have said to you and to other people, attacking me is one thing, but attacking my friends, my family, and my flock, that's a different thing. And it will not go well for you. I said, you're going to do exactly what I told you to do to fix this. And you're going to do it by noon of this Friday. Well, at that point, he changed gears a little bit. He said, well, this isn't going to serve either of us very well to allow this to escalate. I said, no, it's not going to serve you well. I said, but I'm going to fix the problem. Again, not those specific words, but the message. And so at that point, he began to say, well, you know, I'm already the subject of multiple defamation suits. There's nothing for you to get. We might as well just move on. And I said, you're going to admit that what you did was wrong, and you're going to publicly apologize. You're going to do it to me in private, and you're going to do it to the world in public. Again, I'm not giving the exact terminology, so all the wood heads out there, if I don't get the words exactly right, too bad. But that was the message that was communicated. Well, I said, you know, that's not going to cut it. And he began to raise his voice. I said, you're going to do what I told you to do, or you're going to suffer the consequences. And I hung up on him. Oh, preacher, you hung up on him when he called to make apologies. No, he didn't call to make apologies. He then later that day, he put out something, this paltry excuse for trying to excuse away what he did. Never acknowledged he was wrong. Never said he was sorry. And on top of that, he added in the caveat there, well, Pastor McBury's threatening a lawsuit on me. I've never said anything about a lawsuit, but he sure ought to be worried about it. He's very familiar with defamation lawsuits, so I can understand why his mind immediately went there. But I never said anything about the lawsuit. By including the very fact of I'm threatened by another lawsuit, so let me make this statement for my safety and my protection. I never called Mr. McBury a Mason. I don't think Mr. McBury's a Mason. Blah, 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 blah. Well, any of the woodheads that read that and follow Lynn and believe everything he says, just like it's the gospel because Lynn says it, why, they immediately were up in arms. See, he didn't say that and all. But they knew from the caveated message that he was saying what he was saying to protect himself from any possibilities of a defamation lawsuit. Well, first of all, Lynn obviously isn't that good of a defamation attorney. He's already been sued for defamation personally multiple times. I don't know how many times. I know he's lost at least one to the best of my knowledge. But he's not that good of a defamation attorney. So whatever paltry thing he put out there, I assure you it doesn't erase what he's already done. And you don't even have to be an attorney to know that. So let me explain to you what my philosophy is. And what my philosophy has always been, my entire adult life, whenever anybody has tried to keep me from speaking out on constitutional issues, biblical issues, anything like that, the way I have always responded is when someone tries to bully me, stop me from talking about something that is right, my response is to punch him in the face as absolutely hard as I can and then stand there and dare him to do it again. Now, I mean that metaphorically. I don't mean literally punching someone in the face. As a grown man, I don't do that. But I hit him as hard as I can, and I stand there and I dare him to do it again. In my adult life, I can't think of but one or two people that have dared to try to do that again. If they do it again, well, I respond in kind, and I hit them harder than I hit the first time, and I normally do it from some angle that they didn't even see coming. I'm going to be honest with you, I think that's the way every man ought to be. We ought to stand for what's right, not stand for what's wrong, but if we're standing for what's right, we ought to stand there unashamedly, unapologetically, for our family, our friends, our country, our church, the Word of God, and for Christ. I think that's what every man ought to do. I think one of the problems in America is we don't have enough men that will do that anymore. But this pastor's not one of those that won't do it. I will do it. And I encourage the men that I pastor to do that. I encourage the men that I lead and have led in other organizations over the years to do that. We need more godly men that'll just stand up to tyranny. Whether it's a little petty tyrant, a narcissist individual, or whether it's the federal government. We ought to stand up when we know that what we're doing is right. So that's my philosophy. It hasn't changed, and that's why I have responded the way that I have. Now, to the woodheads out there who think, oh, pastor shouldn't have responded that way, he should have turned the other cheek. No, I'm sorry. That's not the correct response. If you harmed just me, and it only affected me, then yes, I should turn the other cheek, try to reconcile you to Christ and to me. But if you harm someone other than just me, someone for whom I am the guardian, the protector, whether it's my friends, my family, or my flock, I will not respond by turning the other cheek. And I don't encourage any other man to do that either. Now, when I originally warned Lynn that he had a deadline that he had to meet in order to make things right before things moved to the next point. I also made it clear on that video to other people who follow Lynn that they would have the same deadline, the same opportunity to make things right. Because even though the overwhelming majority of people have been very supportive of this pastor and of our church since Lynn wrongfully attacked us a little over a week ago, there have been a handful of people that follow Lynn, that believe everything he says is the gospel just because Lynn Wood said it. Well, according to Georgia law, my state, not only is the person who originally makes defamatory statements liable for those statements, but so too is anyone who reposts, restates, or piles on with defamatory statements, leading other people to believe false things about someone that could damage their reputation as an individual or as a church, either one. So, we have all the data collected from a number of different social media channels and different social media formats. It's all been collected. There are people that have been sending it to us from a bunch of different places. It's all been collected in one place for the last week and a half or so. Well, I gave those people the opportunity to do the same thing and to make things right if they had come to the realization they shouldn't have listened to what Lynn said, that Lynn was totally wrong in what he said, and asked for this pastor's forgiveness. And that I would give them the opportunity to do the same thing and follow the same steps that Lynn was going to be required to follow. Well, fortunately, we've had some of those people that have come forward. They've said, Pastor, we shouldn't have listened to him. We know he was wrong, and we won't be just accepting whatever he says at face value again in the future. Would you please accept our apology? And I've told them what they need to do to make that right, and they've done that. I will not be holding them responsible because they did the right thing, both in private and then in public also. Lynn's deadline is already passed. The deadline for those people is already passed too, but I'm going to extend the deadline for 3 days for those who are followers of Lynn that are not the ones who originally made his ridiculous statements, but they either reposted, retold it to someone else verbally, or added their own ridiculousness to it. I'm going to give you 3 more days to come clean. The way you need to do that is by reaching out to Pinnacle Baptist Church through our church website. There's a contact form on there where you can provide that information. I'm going to give you the opportunity to do just like I did Lynn. You'll be able to make a private confession and apology. And if I believe it's sincere, then I'm going to give you an opportunity to do it publicly in the same way that you made the defamatory statements publicly. You say, oh, preacher, who are you to determine whether it's sincere or not? Well, since I'm the one who is the subject of it, I'm going to allow myself to be the determiner of whether it's sincere or not. So if it sounds sincere, I'm probably going to accept it as being sincere, whether it is or not. If it doesn't sound sincere, then it's not going to matter to me whether it really is inside or not. I'm going to be the sole determiner of that, like it or not. But if you do that, I will forgive you and we'll move on, provided that there aren't any more made in the future. We'll still hold on to what you said in the past, but as long as you don't do it again in the future, there won't be any more problems. I will sincerely forgive you. We'll move on, and I will assume that was a bad judgment on your call, and we can go from there. I need to say that moving forward, there are going to be some severe consequences to Lynn Wood because he didn't meet the deadline. And he is still welcome at some point whenever he chooses to make a sincere confession that he was totally wrong, and that it was totally wrong of him to make such accusations against this pastor and against our church. He's totally free to do that and to say he's sorry. And hopefully he'll be sincere if he does. But even if he is, it is not and will not remove what's coming. The opportunity to avert everything that's coming is off the table. Now, the opportunity to avert some of what is coming might still be up for consideration if there were to be sincere repentance and a sincere apology and confession. That hasn't come yet. That has the ability to avert part of what's coming, but not all. But I want to make it clear that you're not going to see the consequences in the next few days. So don't think that you are. And when you don't see them or hear about them in the next few days, don't think that they're off the table or Pastor McBerry decided not to move forward. Don't think that. Don't make that mistake. And Lynn definitely better not make that mistake. There's a long window of time that I have to do whatever I want to do to make things right, or to force him to make things right. I don't play with anybody else's timetable. I play on my timetable, and when I decide to execute justice, I'll execute it in my time, not in Lynn's time, not in anybody else's time. I will be the sole determiner of that based upon my discussions with the Lord and with nobody else. I want to address the fact that Lynn has one of the ridiculous things he put out there trying to insinuate that I'm a Mason is that he said I recommended to him an attorney who is a Freemason, as though I were somehow trying to trap him in some kind of situation with a Freemason attorney for the suits that he has that are still ongoing as far as I know. This was months ago that we had this conversation, and as usual, Lynn has lied again. There are different ways you can lie. You can state something that's just an overt lie, like somebody's a Mason when they're not. Or you can tell a story and leave out pertinent facts in the story so that the person listening to the story makes assumptions that are not true. Both of those are lies. Well, Lynn put out there this ridiculous story about me trying to set him up with a Freemason attorney, to, I guess ostensibly to trap him and cause him harm. Well, now I'm going to tell you what really happened. I was at Lynn's place months ago. I don't think it was quite a year ago. It could have been a year ago, but I don't think it was. But it was a number of months ago. And we were sitting in his living room, just the two of us there at Tomotley. And he was telling me about, looked like one of his cases, defamation suits against him was coming to an end, but he still had some other things out there. I think a couple of other lawsuits, and to be honest with you, I don't know what the details of those are. But he said, I really need to find another attorney. He said, do you know any good attorneys in the Atlanta area that I might can talk to? I said, Lynn, I'm going to be honest with you. All the well-known attorneys I know, to the best of my knowledge, they're probably all Masons. I said, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not going to do a good job for you, but to the best of my knowledge, all the ones I know that are well-known and good reputation attorneys as being good attorneys, they're probably all Masons. He said something along the lines of, well, I believe such and such a person who's, I took it as being one of his lead attorneys, I don't know, is is a Mason too, or I think he's a Mason too, or something like that. And it kind of took me aback for a minute, because I was thinking, well, here you are always telling people that anyone who associates with attorneys that are Masons, that they're evil and wicked and, you know, whatever, and they're suspect, we ought to be suspicious of them. But you just told me that one of your attorneys, maybe even one of your lead attorneys, is very possibly a Mason. Now, I don't know if he's a Mason or not, but that's what I gathered from the conversation with Lynn. Anyway, after he told me that, I assumed he was okay with using an attorney that's a Mason, as long as he knew that the person might be a Mason. So I said, well, I can give you the contact information for the person who handled my libel suit that I ended up winning against this particular person. And I said, but I want to tell you, although he's a great attorney and he and I have a good relationship, I think he's a good person. I don't know why he's a Freemason. I think he probably doesn't know most of what's in the video series that I've posted online. I have witnessed to him. I believe that he's saved. He has not come out of Freemasonry, though. I said, I believe I've seen him on a couple of occasions wear a Masonic ring. I said, now I'm going to continue to talk to him and hopefully be able to get him out of Freemasonry like I've been able to get some other people out of Freemasonry. But at this point, to the best of my knowledge, he's still a Mason. I said, so it's up to you whether you want his contact information or not. So he said, well, I'll think about it. So that visit was over, and I left the next day. A month or so later, we were talking on the phone, and he brought up the attorney I had told him about. He said, would you give me his contact information? I said, yeah, I can do that. I reminded him again that I believe that person's still a Mason. He's not yet come out of Freemasonry. Well, he wanted his contact information, so I gave him his name and his phone number. And so then sometime after that, Lynn called me, and I asked him if he had reached out to the attorney, and he said, yes, I have. I said, well, you know, how did it go? He said, well, I called him. We talked about my case, and he was supposed to call me back, and I never heard back from him. And so now I'm just going to tell you, I've now put two and two together, and a lot makes sense. Lynn didn't turn down the attorney because he was a Mason. The attorney turned down Lynn because he was Lynn. Now, I don't know what the specifics of their conversation were. I don't know what the specific reasons were the attorney turned him down as a client. I know most of the time if a client's willing to pay some money, most attorneys will take their money. But it could have either been because most of the time if attorneys turn down a case, generally speaking, it's because either they think the client doesn't have a ballpark chance of winning, or because they don't think the client's going to pay their attorney bill, or they just don't like the person for some reason. Now, I don't know which of those reasons it was. It might have been something else totally unrelated. It might have been that this particular attorney, his caseload was so full, he wasn't able to invest the resources and the time into whatever Lynn had going on. I have no idea. I haven't asked that attorney, haven't asked Lynn, so I don't know. But the attorney didn't call him back, which is very telling. Lynn was willing to take an attorney that was a Freemason, but he attacks other people for having attorneys that are Freemasons, or for unknowingly saying something good about a congressman who refused to take AIPAC money when the pastor didn't know that the congressman was a member of DMLA, which is a Freemasonic organization. But he was okay attacking the pastor for saying something good about the congressman that had nothing to do with Freemasonry, but yet he's willing to accept an attorney that's a Mason. And then lead his woodheads to believe that pastor was trying to set him up with an attorney that was a Mason without him knowing it was a Mason, and implying that I was trying to do him some harm in some way. Well, none of that is true. It's all lies, just like all of Lynn's lies are lies. Lynn lies all the time. He just does it by leaving things out a lot of times in the middle of the story that are important facts to the story. So did I recommend an attorney to Lynn who is a Mason? I think he's a Mason. I don't know that, but yes, I did. Did I tell Lynn that he is a Mason or that I believe he's a Mason? Yes, I did. Ahead of time. 2 times. Did Lynn say that he still wanted his contact information? Yes, he did. Was I trying to set Lynn up by giving him the contact information for a lawyer that's a Mason? No, I wasn't. Those are the kind of silly, ridiculous accusations that when you leave certain piece of information out, you try to make this person look like the bad guy when they weren't the bad guy at all. You're the bad guy because you're a liar, a narcissist, and some other words that preachers aren't supposed to say. I had a friend one time who said, I won't say it, but if you'll write it down, I'll sign it. Well, I'm not going to sign it either, but you get the gist. Lynn is a liar. And a lot of things that he says, people accept them as being the gospel truth because Lynn said them. Well, you better stop doing that. You better start using your own judgment and questioning things that Lynn says, or just don't listen to him at all. Your choice. But you're going down a very wrong road if you're going to keep assuming that everything that Lynn Wood says is the gospel just because Lynn Wood says it. If you're the kind of person who accepts everything that Lynn says as the gospel, you ought to reevaluate some things. If you're the kind of person who sees a Mason behind every tree or under every rock, you ought to reevaluate some things. If you're the kind of person who thinks that every handshake that looks a little bit out of the ordinary must mean that the preacher is a Freemason, you need to re-examine some things in your own life. If you're the kind of person who likes to flip church logos upside down and find Masonic aprons in a church on top, a cross on top of a mountaintop, when the church's name is Pinnacle Baptist Church, you need to reevaluate some things. You need to reevaluate some things in your own life, in your own judgment. And you need to stop believing what anybody says as the gospel truth unless you see it for yourself. And taking this little hodgepodge of stupid things and acting like they prove anything, you need to reevaluate your own critical thinking skills. But better yet, what you need to reevaluate is why are you accepting as the gospel truth everything that some man says just because he said it? Because I'm going to tell you, Lynn Wood is a liar. And there are a lot of other lies. Some of them I'm going to expose in this series. Some of them are going to get exposed in the courtroom. And I can't wait for that day. But they're going to get exposed. Lynn has done this same thing to other people. I don't know how many people because I don't really know him that well. Haven't known him but about a year. Has he done this same thing to some other innocent people besides me? I don't know. I'm going to find out. And, I'm sure some of them weren't innocent. I believe that. But I wonder if some of the others were. Because I know this pastor is. So we're going to find out. It's going to be an exciting adventure. But if you're still listening to Lynn Wood and accepting everything he says as the gospel truth, you better reevaluate yourself and your thinking. Is this pastor a Mason? No, I'm not a Mason, but I'm one angry pastor right now. And I'm not the kind of pastor who's going to just turn the other cheek and let you attack me, my family, my friends, and my church. I'm not that pastor. I'm one of those Scottish pastors who will strap on his claymore and go to war. And you have invited it. You've brought it into your life. It's coming. The storm is coming. Better get ready for it.